Now by Khalil Dewan from the TRT World Research Centre. Thank you for joining us today. Tell us more about some of the key findings of your report.
Sure. TRT World Research Centre's latest investigation yields evidence of torture across Syria between 2011 and 2016. And we have seen that the Syrian regime is actually running sexual abuse and rape as a stratagem of war across Syrian prisons and a network of prisons they have. Most of them are indeed secret. And we have seen incessant rape taking place by these Syrian regime soldiers and law enforcement police. In addition to interrogators, psychological torture has also been administered by the Syrian regime, including forcing women to listen to torture of their cousins and their spouse, as well as forcing them to walk over torture blood and placing them into solitary confinement for weeks and months on end without seeing the sun for a very long time.
It is very shocking to hear all of this. What can be done to ensure that people who are responsible are ultimately held accountable?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, what we have documented indeed is a violation of international human rights law, but in the same time, international humanitarian law, otherwise known as the law of armed conflict. Combatants and non-combatants cannot be treated like this, cannot be derogated under international conventions, in addition to state practice. So I think now the best thing to do is for human rights organizations to come together, including public international law lawyers, to support NGOs on the ground to document these cases so that when we move in to a post-conflict reconstruction and reconciliation phase, we can indeed pave the way for litigation. So in the end, we must say that the Syrian government is indeed on notice.
And as I mentioned, these are just really shocking to hear, but at the same time not surprising. But you don't really hear much in the international community talking about this. I mean, is there just not much awareness about what's going on?
Absolutely. I think at the beginning when the Syrian conflict was being covered, we were focusing more on male detainees. However, females were really the lost or forgotten part of the conflict. Now that we are moving forward into the conflict, human rights investigations are being taken place, access towards the conflict is being made. These stories are coming out more to shed light on what's happening and the extent of the violations as well, crimes against humanity.
And I know you've already touched on this, but for these women who are being subjected to abuses, physically and psychologically, and rape, I mean, what can be done when they're rescued and, to help them, reintegrate into society and move on, with their lives?
Sure. I think at the moment, well, the UN has a 30 million fund for this. However, it's inadequate, to say the least. And I think now states must come together to build a grant for this, particularly from a psychological element. And then there needs to be educational programs as well. Women are also very scared to talk about their torture because of the cultural blowback, as mentioned in my report, which will feed into several other impediments to supporting them.
All right, Khalil Dewan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.